Hey guys, what is up? This is Matthew DSME once again. Welcome back to the movie review, aka After I Saw. This time it is going to be on How to Train Your Dragon. This is DreamWorks' first attempt at a live-action adaptation of one of their beloved animated films. In the same way Disney has been doing that, even though they've been making loads of money, most of them anyway. It doesn't really matter if they're loved. As long as they make that sweet moolah, then yeah, it doesn't really matter. DreamWorks wants to get it in on that magic too. If you never watched the original movie, which you should have, it's been 15 years. 15 years since the original. Oh man, I remember seeing the original in theaters in 3D with a bunch of friends. It was such a fantastic experience. I only saw 3 movies in 2010. Diary of a Wimpy Kid, How to Train Your Dragon, and Toy Story 3. I also did see re-releases of Harry Potter and Deathly Hallows Part 1 and Inception in 2020, but that's beside the point. Anyways, if you've never seen the original movie, then the story is very simple. Vikings and dragons are sworn enemies, and when a young Viking named Hiccup wants to become exactly like them and getting his chance by capturing a night fairy, instead of killing it, he realizes dragons are a lot more than they seem and that they're far misunderstood than the Vikings would make them out to be. As the dragon, which he names Toothless, becomes injured, he tends to befriend the dragon and help it fly again, and he wants to show the land of Berk that dragons are a lot more than vicious creatures and only trying to protect themselves because they're just as afraid of humans as they are of them. Unless you're not a Viking, in which case Vikings aren't afraid to fight, but that's beside the point. I absolutely loved the How to Train Your Dragon movies. I got 2 versions, the original, got a 4K steelbook, and the regular Blu-ray. But it's always been my favorite DreamWorks franchise. Shrek might be DreamWorks' most iconic franchise, but at least all the movies are fantastic, in my opinion. I didn't hate the last 2 Shrek movies, it's just, well, at this point, why are we even getting a 5th one? Oh yeah, because franchises still never die. But anyways, the original How to Train Your Dragon has always been my favorite DreamWorks movie, although a certain recent DreamWorks movie has come out recently, which might take this movie's title away as my favorite DreamWorks movie of all time. You know which one I'm talking about.
Megamind vs. the Doom Syndicate.
Dude, it was obvious what I was talking about. Though Puss in Boots' Last Wish would also have been a good guess too. I still can't believe it's been 15 years since the movie came out. And the fact that they decided to make a live-action adaptation, I almost couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe that this was actually a real thing. But, of course, because it's a live-action adaptation, I wasn't too hyped for it. Because from the look of the trailer, it had so many similarities to the original film, including specific lines said in the original film, and practically spoiling how the movie ends a little bit. Because if you've seen the original movie, you know exactly where it's going to go. And is the movie entirely shot for shot? Yes. It is completely shot for shot, despite the fact that this movie is 30 minutes longer than the original. There's almost no change whatsoever. I will say this, though. It's not bad. I'm going to say this right off the bat. I don't think this is a bad movie. At least it's not doing changes to insult the original. At least it's not putting in, like, I don't really know how to put it. At least it's not insultingly bad, okay? There will definitely be some people who will love the movie for the nostalgia that it brings to people who have seen the original, but that might also be one of the reasons why people might also not like the movie because of that. Because live-action adaptations, they just don't always seem to surpass their original. I feel like the closest they have managed to do with that was when Disney made Jungle Book. That, I feel like, is the closest thing to a live-action adaptation to surpass its original animated predecessor, in my opinion. But after that, it's just been, okay, we get the point, but still continue on with making original films. I know, I'm supposed to be talking about DreamWorks since this is their first attempt, but again, with Disney, like, what's going on there? But on the bright side, at least DreamWorks has still been making animated properties, original ones. I know The Wild Robot was based off a book, but I'm getting too far into it. Let me talk about the movie itself, how it compares to the original. Well, I will say this. It's a visually striking film when it comes to the land of Berk. The production design, I think, is absolutely spot on, and the way the dragons look, specifically with Toothless, I think they absolutely nailed in the same way that, they managed to nail Stitch in terms of his design and his voice, given how he's from the same voice actor in the live-action Lilo and Stitch. Which, funny thing, as Chris Sanders directed both the original How to Train Your Dragon with another director, as well as the original Lilo and Stitch, and both movies got live-action adaptations this year. I'm not sure if that's a coincidence, but I found that to be very funny. Also, here's the thing too. At least this is from someone who is very familiar with the How to Train Your Dragon movies, because this movie just so happens to come from the original director of all three of the movies. He worked with Chris Sanders on the first one. His name is Dean DeBlois. I think that's how you pronounce it. And yeah, he managed to direct the hell out of all three of the movies. And the fact that he was coming back to direct this film, I thought, brought in some hope. Because he still understood what made that original so good, at least in terms of, what the story was like. But in terms of how it portrays in live action form, like I mentioned before, this movie doesn't really have any major changes. The story remains the same. Scenes remain the same. Most dialogue stayed the same, except for some scenes being taken out. Though there are very minor scenes whatsoever, and very minor lines of dialogue, which, for someone who has seen the original tons of times, has definitely noticed it. Now, is there really a big change to this entire thing? Is there some added storyline whatsoever? Well, there is. There is one thing that truly separates this apart from the animated film. You want to know what the biggest change to really separate this apart from the animated film is? You really want to know what it is? Because you will not believe the biggest thing they've added to this new version, okay? It's going to blow you away. They show Snotlout's dad, and Snotlout's trying to be cool to his dad, but he doesn't notice him until towards the end of the movie during... Well, the point is, you're not even going to remember that it's there, because it's entirely pointless and has very little screen time. And that's it. That's the biggest change. Also, Hiccup and Astrid talk longer when it comes to, Hiccup studying that book, but... just to add in more of Astrid's character, but that's really about it. Other than that, there's really nothing that really changes the story whatsoever. And for some people, that's definitely going to be an annoyance. Now, when it comes to how scenes are portrayed, when it comes to flying in the sky with the dragons, that's visually appealing. There's almost, nothing to complain about in terms of those scenes. Even the CGI, it never really looked, atrocious. It's not perfect or anything like that, but it definitely didn't look terrible. In fact, I thought it was visually appealing. But here's the thing. When they recreate the scene of Hiccup and Astrid in the sky with Toothless, with that beautiful music playing, the way it's portrayed in an emotional perspective, yeah, it didn't really work. Because when they're up in the sky, I know this is technically a spoiler, but again, it's shot for shot, and I don't think it really matters at this point. But when they're in the sky, the emotion just isn't there. The closest there ever is when Toothless shows emotion. But when the live-action versions of Astrid and Hiccup are on screen when they're flying in the sky, they don't show any emotion whatsoever. And that's one thing that I really thought was taken away from this sequence. Because that was the moment where Hiccup won Astrid over and gaining her her good side, because Astrid wanted nothing to do with Hiccup in the original, but when Hiccup showed her of how dragons were a lot more than just enemies, that's what won her over. And the way it's handled here just didn't really feel as earned, especially since, again, it's really the same story, yeah. I get what Dean was going for here, because he's just trying to bring in, remember all this from that original film that me and Chris Sanders made that you love so much, because I feel like that's all that this movie's really going for, is just making you remember how good that original is. But as I was watching the movie, I just kind of wish I was going back to that original. Now, that's not to say that these new actors are bad in the movie. The new guy that plays Hiccup, I feel like has the closest resemblance to his character counterpart, basically with the hairstyle. He might not have that voice, but that can kind of be a good thing, because while Jay Baruchel really nailed playing Hiccup in the entire franchise, the way his character evolves, just, it's nice to have someone play Hiccup without having to feel like he needs that voice He's played by Mason Thames or Thamus. I'm just gonna call him Mason, and he definitely tries being more serious than socially awkward at some parts, but I feel like that's kind of what's missing in some of these characters. I will say, the one that stands out the most in this new adaptation is Gerard Butler, who reprises his role as stoic, and while he doesn't fully look like his character counterpart, that's okay, because, hey, he sounds the same, and he definitely is the one who's trying to, portray his anime counterpart the most, and while his characteristics isn't as powerful as it was in the original, or any of these other characters, like, at least they know who they're trying to play, even if they don't really have that same charisma as in the animated film. And I know I'm comparing it a lot to the animated film, but that's basically what I feel like most people are going to do when talking about this movie. Because again, it doesn't change anything to the story. All that really happens is that, scenes drag on a little bit longer, giving it that over 2-hour long rating. And for some people, that is definitely going to be a bother. But, yeah, who knows? Like, you'll probably love the movie just for, the fact that, oh, I remember how awesome How to Train Your Dragon was. And this movie is really capturing that and bringing back those memories. Because, again, as I was watching the movie, I just wished I was kind of going back to the original. But that's not to say that I hated this movie. Again, I didn't hate it. It does a very faithful job of, recreating the movie's story and not doing anything to do any major changes that will just completely insult the formula whatsoever. Because, again, it's not a remake that's insulting. It's just a remake that is far more familiar. Because that, to me, is usually the types of remakes that don't always work the same way as they should. Because that's one thing I will say about some of Disney's live-action remakes is that they do have changes. A lot of them don't really work. I mean, the ending to the live-action Lilo and Stitch definitely caused controversy of, not having that same message that the original had. And, of course, all the changes that happened in Snow White. But, again, this isn't an insultingly bad remake. It's just a shot-for-shot clone of the original film, just slightly longer, and not really doing anything to add anything new to really separate it apart. I mean, the actors, they definitely try. It's a nice looking film, and it could have been far worse. Like, it was what it was, okay? But it's another one of those remakes where after I'm done watching it, I'm just gonna soar right back to the original all over again. I'm just hoping, regardless of how much money this movie makes, I just hope this doesn't end up being a new thing from DreamWorks. I want more Puss in Boots: Last Wish. I want more Wild Robot. I don't care if they make 100 more Kung Fu Panda movies. I just don't want this to be a full new thing for them. Could you imagine a live-action Shrek, or Kung Fu Panda, or Madagascar, or Megamind, or Trolls, or Boss Baby, or Shark Tale? I'm just going to stop before I start giving them ideas. And people are going to start attacking me for giving them those ideas. But hey, you don't have to fully listen to me. There are definitely going to be some people who will enjoy the movie. Like, there were tons of 5-star reviews on Letterboxd when I gave my rating on there. So, yeah, it will have its fans. So, yeah, but we'll just see how it plays out. But, yeah. Not a bad first attempt, but I really hope they don't do this more often. I really hope not, because you get my point. But anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to like and maybe subscribe for more. You can also follow me on Twitter or Instagram or maybe Blue Sky. Links are in the description. And yeah, I'll see you guys later. Word out.